I'm Brian Van, Sportbike, and today we're going to break down the Woodcraft axle slider install on our 2018 Kawasaki Ninja 400 project bike. Okay, let's talk about the product first. Why would you want to install these on your bike? Well, they're available front and rear. It's actually the same kit, okay? Because the way Kawasaki designed the bike, the axle bolt and nut setup, it's realistically pretty much the same front and rear, okay? So the same kit works for front or rear. If you want to do both, you have to order a total of 2 kits. Installing these gets you a plastic slider, you can see the contour on it too to help promote a slide, that is going to go over your axle bolts on your fork bottoms and background of the swing arm to help protect the motorcycle in the event of a crash and or a tip over, okay? One of the hidden benefits of installing this kit front and rear is you're going to eliminate the need for this cotter pin that goes through the castle nut on the axle. These can only be used a couple of times. This has been on and off once, and it'll probably snap next time I bend it around. So this thing's pretty much done. If you're doing track days or you're racing, you have to get the wheels off more frequently than a street rider. Okay, this thing is going to be a pain in the ass for you. You're gonna want to take care of that. There's different ways to do it, but installing this kit gets you the protection you want here and also eliminates that. Retention, you can see that that's in there pretty tight. What I like to do is get a little tap there on the bottom and then pull through like so. So you can see that's clearly not going to fall out of there, okay? This holds the slider on, and it also makes sure the castle nut does not come loose on your axle. Okay, so the Woodcraft Ninja 400 axle slider kit, the same set fits the front or the rear. We're going to install them on the rear first, and then we'll do the front second to show you the entire install. This is the nut side right here, okay? And this is the bolt side for the axle bolt. See, it's got a heavy duty pin. We also have on this side an Allen that is used to help hold that in place. So when you're going to pull the axle slider, you also have to back the Allen out. And it looks like about that far. Okay, so you can see that thread's right in there. There is a cotter pin that's in here. We've already removed it on a separate video, and it broke and we tried to pull it back out, so that's the bottom line. We need a new one, except for with this, you're not going to use that pin any longer. This is just going to slide right over like so. It needs to line up with the bolt, okay? There are 4 holes in the bolt that you're able to pass this through. So it's really important when you do this, this is standing straight up and down. Right, so you have to have one of the 2 holes straight up and down. So you need to be able to identify that very easily during tire changes. And then this slides on there, okay? The puck will go over, and then this will go through. And what's bitching about this is this actually is going to take care of any axle safety wiring needs you would have too. And then of course you're going to have to tighten this up. So yeah, the installing on this side is very easy. On the other side, the bolt side, it looks a little different. Once you pull the pin out, you'll see we have a cup. This cup needs to go on the other side of the axle bolt. So you need to pull the axle bolt all the way off. So effectively, you're going to need to remove the rear tire to install in the rear, and or remove the front to get this on there. Okay, so let's dive right in. We need to get a 24 mil and a 17. I got a 24 mil socket over here on the 1/2-inch ratchet. 17 mil wrench to hold the other side of the axle bolt. We'll get this axle nut loosened up and off. Okay, now we can start to push the axle through. Now it's decision time, right? Obviously, when we pull the axle, the wheel's going to drop, and then you got to deal with all that. There's different ways to do this. If you have the bike on the ground, you can put a foot underneath this to help support it as you go through the process. Quickly get the axle bolt back through, you're good to go. If you have a pit bull stand and a pit bull pit crew tire wedge, now's the time you would pull that out And what this is going to do, it's just going to literally hold that right in place, okay? And we'll grab the axle, pull it through, like so. We'll take the cup. See how that drops nice? Look at that tolerance too, it's nice and tight. Now instead of using a wrench over here, we're gonna have to get a 17 mil socket. You can clearly see that. Chain adjuster ready here again. I like to take and clean and lube the axle anytime I take it out and put it back in. A little MPPL here. Just a thin film, like so. You know, and this really makes this job a whole hell of a lot easier, having that pit bull, pit crew tire wedge. That's just holding that. Get that back on there, and we'll come over to the other side and make sure we're going to pass through that caliper hanger, nice and straight. Okay, and now we need to go through the chain adjuster. Like so. Okay, so we have that through. I'm going to go ahead and begin assembling this side again. Side's a little easier. Okay, remember one thing that is really important now. Let me just pull the axle through a little bit. We have to make sure that one of these two through holes is standing straight up and down, or it's going to be perpendicular to this flat line on the swing arm. Okay, so got my ratchet. We're going to go ahead and just kind of get that situated now. Not going to tighten anything up yet. We're definitely going to get it moving in that direction. We also have to make sure that we put enough tension on the chain adjusters that they're held firmly against the ends of the swing arm. I guess I'm not really going to torque this right now. I'm just going to get it seated so we can finish. Okay, you know, as we're going through this install, I'm really looking at it and I want to try and make this as repeatable as possible for fast tire changes, and that's part of the whole point of this kit, right? So what I did is I put just a little bit of a scratch in it with a die grinder. Of course, I didn't use safety glasses, so we didn't show it so people wouldn't complain about that. And then I used a Sharpie just to make a mark so you have a nice straight up and down reference. And you can see now that axle is really not as perpendicular as I really wanted it, okay? So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna loosen that up, and we're gonna use that mark to just dial that in all the way. We know that the axle bolt is lined up correctly on the other side, so that the hole is going to be standing straight up and down. Now remember this cup over here, you want to do the same thing here. Okay, get that so it's going to be relatively straight up and down, like so. Now there's even another moving part to this. We want to make sure that we have the chain adjusters forced up against the ends of the swing arm. I like to use a wrench to do that. In between the sprocket and the chain, we'll roll it back, and then just smack it a couple times. Like so. I'm going to hold a little pressure there. Make sure that that's lined up. Get our ratchet going in the right direction. And you can see I'm holding that pressure there with my forearm right now. Lots of moving pieces. But once I get enough tension on this, I can relax that forearm like so and let the wrench roll out of there. Now we can focus on just torquing the axle bolt. Now remember, I'm not going to use a torque wrench. If you prefer to use a torque wrench, now would be a great time to grab that out of your toolbox and do so. Okay, got that all torqued up. I'm happy with where that's at. It's important to note you're going to want to check your chain tension. This is a new bike, that's still in spec. We're good to go there, but with your own bike, make sure you're cognizant of that and double check it. Come back over to the right side of the bike. Okay, that is nice and perpendicular. I dig that. That's right where I want it to be now. You go ahead and slide this on. Remember, the threaded hole goes on the bottom towards the swing arm. Slide that over. Make sure the set screw is on the bottom. Safety clip. And especially when this is all new, you know, I want you to expect some pressure. And that locked in there, that is very positively locked in there, okay? Super nice. That is also going to take and replace the need for that cotter pin, which is kind of cool. And then you can just go ahead and tighten down that set screw, thread that in there. We'll go over to the other side. Okay, now we're over on the other side. You want to go ahead and take the slider, push it over the cup, safety pin, push it down, and then kind of pull forward a little bit on that pin, and you'll find the hole, and push it right through. So what we learned here is that little mark, I think, on the axle bolt, it's going to help you just get that lined up. It's going to make the tire changes go a lot easier. Okay, so I would recommend doing that. I scratch a little bit with a cutting tool and then put a mark on it with a Sharpie so it'll last a long time. Very repeatable. And also remember, this is going to be pretty tight when the stuff is brand new. Expect some resistance pushing the pin through and then pulling the pin back out. You know, tap it like so. And then to push it back through. You know, and it's okay if you want to just smack it like that. Drop it right back in there. No problem on both sides. I like it. It makes a lot of sense. It takes place of that cotter pin, which is cool for sure, because that cotter pin's not going to stand the test of time. We took it off and put it back on a couple of times and the thing broke, so this replaces the need for that. And remember, this kit is universal. It works on the front or the rear, so if you want to do both front and rear of your Ninja 400, you have to order two. Okay, so now we're going to install the front Woodcraft axle slider kit. First thing you're going to have to do is remove this cotter pin. You will not be reusing this, okay? The Woodcraft axle slider kit has a safety pin that's going to go through here, take the place of this. That's actually kind of a benefit and bonus if you're riding on the track or racing. You don't have to deal with this cotter pin anymore, because realistically, you're going to be able to use these things a couple of times and they're just going to break. In order to install this axle slider kit, just like in the rear, we have to be able to lift the motorcycle off the ground so we can pull the axle all the way out, okay? In order to do that, you need a front stand. I'm going to lift this one by the fork bottoms. You can also use a triple tree stand and lift it by the bottom of the triple, but you have to have a stand to pull the axle out. Let's grab a forklift stand here, support it from the bottoms. Additionally, I will not be using a torque wrench in this video. I typically do not use one. If you prefer to, I would encourage you to research the factory torque specs and have your torque wrench handy to use during this procedure. 24 millimeter on a 1/2 inch ratchet for the axle nut, and then I have a 17 mil on a 3/8 ratchet as a backup. Go ahead and pull the axle bolt. There's a couple of ways to do this now. You could just remove the entire front wheel. Okay, you could also put something underneath this like I'm about to, which is my Pitbull Pit Crew tire wedge. It's going to hold that wheel in place. Or you could also pull it off, and if you're doing this on the ground, not at a work table, the way you sit, you would put your foot underneath here to help support it, hold the wheel in place, and just do it really quickly and make the job a little bit easier. Okay, wheel supported. I'm going to go ahead and just push the axle out. Should be able to leave that in place right now. You'll see here I did take a Sharpie too, and I just made a mark between the two holes. There's two sets of them. I'm just going to choose one and use that. It's going to help me as I go to put this all back together. On the axle bolt, you need to slide this cup over. The tolerance here, it is tight, okay? So once you slide that bad boy over, it's going to want to stay pretty much in place. I'm going to line the grooves and holes in this up with the slot I have here, or the line there, reference point. Okay. I'm going to lubricate and clean the axle, a little MPPL. WD-40 would work as well. Slide that back through. You see that is pretty nice having the wheel held in place. Okay, just kind of get that straight up and down. Check over here, that looks pretty good too. I also like to put a thin film of MPPL on this washer. It goes behind the castle nut right here. This makes everything spin better so it doesn't grab onto the fork bottom. Okay, now we can go ahead and torque this. If you're going to use a torque wrench, now would be the time to get that. Look up your factory torque spec. I will not be using one. Very important that you have that castle nut lined up with the hole that goes through the axle, okay? The better the alignment of those holes, the easier it's going to be to install this Woodcraft kit. Now you see why I put that line there. So I want to make sure I have that as perpendicular to the floor as possible. On the other side, I want to make sure the cup is in a similar position to that as well. And then we'll go ahead and start to apply torque. Just a tiny bit more to get that lined up. Okay, once again, we've already checked and we saw the safety pin passes through easily. Take the hardware and slip it over the castle nut so the threaded hole is inboard on the motorcycle. Just like that. Now we can take the actual slider itself, push it over, get your safety pin. And what I found is the first time you use these, they're definitely a little tight. Kind of push the safety pin through like so. Get it into its final resting place. Now I'm going to use an Allen. You could put a little thread locker on that if you want to. It's really held pretty tightly. So I don't think it's going to vibrate loose at all as it goes through that plastic slider, but you know, the more you take it apart and put it back together, that could loosen up a little bit. So this is the fork side. And now what I find is easiest is to just use a screwdriver to pull that. So you can see moving forward, the set screw is really out of place. You can put a little thread locker in there, not a problem. Your safety pin, a little tap like so. Because the tolerances are pretty tight, and you can see that the finished product, I mean, that thing is for sure on there. Once again, pull it. Put it back on, like so. Now we'll go to the other side and put the slider on top of the axle bolt. Okay, on the bolt side, you can see I still have those. They're really perpendicular to the floor. Go ahead and take the slider itself, slip it over. Let's get our safety pin in there. Find the holes. Downward pressure. This side, a whole lot easier. That just dipped right over, okay? Pull it out. So for wheel changes, you're really not adding a lot of time, okay? The tolerances are pretty tight, so, you know, as you saw on the other side, you are tugging on it a little bit, so kind of expect that. And I do really feel like the more you use it, the easier that's going to become. Advantages here, if you're going to do this front and rear, you eliminate the need for the cotter pin, which is nice because these things, they're just not going to stand the test of time, right, for sure. So you eliminate the need for that, and they're still basically wired up and good to go. You don't have to worry about it coming loose. In a crash, these are going to go a long way towards protecting the swing arm as well as the fork bottoms themselves. Woodcraft has been doing the axle sliders for a number of years now. Lots of applications out there. Every install looks a little bit different because the bike really dictates the type of install. The one on the Ninja here, I like it. It looks good. The biggest challenge is going to be that whole castle nut alignment with the hole through the axle bolt, so on and so forth. Once you get that dialed, all in all, the end result is solid. I'm Brian Van, SportbikeTrackGear.com. This is our Woodcraft Ninja 400 axle slider install.